Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, you got to realize I'm a marketing person. I'm not a teacher. So to help me out with you, I took Mike's advice and I brought an extra brain. I stole it from Cheryl's office. Chris Payne, where are you? Chris Payne and I, a few years back when he was visiting, I brought him back to the airport and I asked Chris, you want to stop by a radio station, do an interview and photo reading? And he said, sure, let's do it. So we stopped in at the station. They gave us 2 books. Chris had a novel and I had a nonfiction book. They gave us 30 minutes to photo read and activate the book. Then they brought us back on the air to answer questions. I'm going to play part of the tape right now so you can hear that. When we're finished, I'm going to tell you something that will shock you. It will change the way you look at yourself and you look at activation. And it will really help you when you come up to the photo reading challenge coming up in a couple days. Okay? They're doing it tonight?
Here we go. Okay, there we go. I got it. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And then again, maybe we don't. Oh, there it was. Was that it?
Yep. We wanted just a tit.
A bank robber called Candy. Her husband, Lachaise, is actually in prison.
Want me to back up?
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay.
I think I've got a very good sense of what the
That's
plot
good.
is and how it all flows out. And it's a really nice, well-written book. I really enjoyed it.
All right, let me start out with...
How long did it take you to read it?
I spent about 25 minutes.
Okay. And I spent... How many hours did I spend reading it?
You can also so get a sense of how well the book is crafted in that amount of time with photo reading.
Yeah, I get this sense of the
nuance.
structure, the nuances, the pace.
Well, tell us a little bit about the book. Okay, now,
All right.
without giving away the ending, I might... All right.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
Where
Waste time.
did it take place?
Well, it's in the cities. I'm not from the States, but I've got this sense of the cities. There's mention of St. Paul that seemed to come into my head. Lucas Davenport is a detective, and his
That was
wife...
going to be my next question. Lucas Davenport's a detective, okay.
They've been chasing a bank robber called Candy. Her husband, Lachaise, is actually in prison and manacled in the prison, and he finds out that his wife, Candy's been murdered by the police, and Georgie, which is his sister, also gets killed, and his mother wants him to stay in prison and say, look, let their dogs lie, but he manages to escape from prison and goes after all the cops' wives, and so there's this chasing throughout the whole book.
Do you remember the chief's name? The Minneapolis police chief? Okay, that's all right. And how about the Darling's house?
Sandy Darling is the sister.
No, wait, has this been made into a movie yet?
She's 29. She's got slight crow's feet. I remember that. This is too cool. This is too cool.
We should reiterate too. Chris is here from. Are you from London?
Yeah, I'm from Manchester, England.
From
yes.
Manchester,
I
just-
went photo reading a year ago, and I was, this is crazy. I mean, I was just very sceptical, but I'll try anything once.
And you came back to the States just to take this advanced course.
Yeah, because it was just bizarre what happened to me on the course. I just had the most amazing things happen with the dictionary game and with some books that I photo read, and then the most bizarre things seem to happen over the next week that I thought.
Like what?
Well, the most peculiar thing was I activated a book which I hadn't read for 2 years. I watched a documentary on TV on Joseph Campbell on mythology. Next morning, I woke up Sunday morning, went for a book on the shelf called Pragmagic, opened it up, opened a particular page, and there was the exact same story that I'd just seen on the documentary the day before.
Wow.
And I thought, I haven't read this book in 2 years.
You know?
My mind has picked out of 600 books I've got in my bedroom. Why would my mind seem to know what to go for? It was like, this is just too spooky.
Do they have different levels? Like, you come for the most advanced course. You like a 5th degree black book?
The photo course teaches into photo read. The advanced course was about how I can go through stuck states. So it was about emotional change, using photo reading as a way to go
Wow,
through
this
the
is such a trip.
Interesting.
This guy should be doing infomercials.
Really?
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
now, Pete, the book I gave you is by Paul Pearsall, and it's called The 10 Laws of Lasting Love.
Yep.
And it's not exactly self-help. I think it goes beyond that. It's a very heady book.
A very heady book.
Nonfiction, and it's about how our actual bodies and body chemistry interacts with our emotions to create the relationships in our lives. I guess is how I would summarize it. How about you?
That's a great way to summarize it. What I'd even say is that if anybody's out there, if you're in a relationship whatsoever, this is the type of book where you can go in and figure out what's great about your relationship, what's not so good about it, what you can do, what steps you can do in order to make it a better relationship. Because they have 10 different laws in there where you get a look at the relationship from a totally different perspective from a lot of people, how people do right now.
Than simply romance
Just
or
romance, yeah.
right.
It's about becoming one in a marriage, in a relationship. And that's something that, they always say you become one, but do you really? And so in one of the chapters on oneness, it will give you at the end of the chapter a whole series of questions that you can ask yourself about your relationship. And if you're answering no to any of those, then geez, this is something I can work with. And you can go back into that chapter and pull up many different ways to work in that particular area.
And what are some of the disciplines he brings together in his theories? Because he's talking not only about psychology, but also, what, did you pick up anything about physics, metaphysics?
Oh, yeah, Chris was just talking about Joseph Campbell. He's in there, and he has some insights in Joseph Campbell. Albert Einstein, so there's a lot of physics stuff in there. So yeah, there is stuff that comes in from many different disciplines to bring it into here, which is great because that's what relationships are all about. It's about bringing in the wholeness. It's not just about you, it's not just about me. It's about bringing in the wholeness of the world.
All right, Rob, I
That's
bet you a
amazing.
specific question for Pete.
Yeah, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
All right, well, I had
Now, divorce shock symptoms. Do you know any of the divorce shock symptoms? For instance, there's number 2. Any of the divorce shock?
SIDS is the
Yeah.
acronym it's given.
Well, first of all, as far as the divorce shocks and symptoms and all those other things, one of the things the book says is when it comes to divorce, you really don't divorce the individual. It's a very challenging process because relationships transcend what's going on in the here and now, and it can go on for ever and ever. But when it comes to divorce, you can actually go through and you can make some decisions in there whether or not divorce is right or what you can do with the relationship
Okay,
in order to keep
that's
that.
good. That's a really fair overview. How about the question and the answer in the book, why is there sex?
Chaos.
That's absolutely correct.
Whoa!
Nature's way of creating genetic chaos is how the book quotes it, to deal our species a strong evolutionary hand.
Absolutely.
All right, that's not, do you know approximately what page you'd find that on?
I could, no, it's like writing probably 3/4 of the way through the book.
Yeah, it's page 227 of a 300-page book.
This is freaky.
And then one question about this book, what is passion potion poisoning?
Then what the book does, it has a series of steps that you can do in order to overcome that so that you don't become intoxicated by the different chemical reactions. You can actually create them yourself so that you can form a lasting relationship. It talks about miracle marriages. Okay, it's not just...
Damn, I thought we were going to stump him.
See, and this is interesting about photo reading because photo reading is not about getting the specific facts, about understanding all the individual details, about bringing it together as a whole, and that's the
And understanding the overall concept.
Yeah.
It's not a philosophy book.
It's about owning the concepts.
And that's the same thing that the author of the book is saying about relationships. So this book complements what goes on in photo
And
reading.
someone who has been tested to have average intelligence could still thrive with your program.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, that doesn't really matter. You
No,
say that.
this is an ability that everybody has. It's a natural ability that we all have with kids, but we lost it when we went to school. Because we learned a different way of learning.
Wasn't that fun? And that's the photo reading challenge. And here's the shocker. We had a half an hour to photo read and activate our books. They gave us a high sign about 2 minutes before it was time to go back into the studio. I had no idea what the heck was going on in the book. Nothing was making sense to me. I figured this was going to be the time that I was just going to, sorry, I don't know anything. And then as I started to walk into the studio, from the side studio, stuff started to come together for me. But I still felt like I knew nothing from the book. It was all Greek to me. Then when they started to answer the questions, then everything just started to unfold. the questions became the activation session for the book that I had just activated, actually. When she asked the question for the purpose of sex, I started to lean into the microphone without the foggiest idea what I was going to say. The word chaos came to me. I said it. She looked at me. She looked down at the book and she started to read to see what it was. And the author, it was difficult for him to get to the point, so she had to read through the paragraph. And then she said what she said. But as she was reading that statement, I had spent on the 2 pages, it was on the bottom one page, continued to the top of the next page, I had maybe spent on those 2 pages a total of 5 seconds to photo read and activate those 2 pages. And yet at that moment, I had about 2.5 minutes worth of memories. Everything started to flood out. And that's cool, right? Okay. And so it's like I've said to a lot of you that have called in to talk with me, well, geez, you know, I've been activating for 5-10 minutes, I'm getting absolutely nothing. So what? You know, I always say if it takes you 10 hours to read a book regular, you can spend 3 hours with it, a beginning photo reader, to be able to get through the book and fully understand it to the degree as if you had read it for 10 hours. But it's possible to go 2 hours and 59 minutes and really feel like you're getting nothing from it. Well, you put yourself into a situation, and then all of a sudden it gels. Or if you put yourself into a situation like we're doing with the photo reading challenge, it gels, and you know that you know it.
What I like to do, and Pete doesn't know I've done this, but I was watching and observing what he was doing and what he was saying he was doing.
Am I going to need another brain for this?
Yeah, you might. No. What I just want to do is tell you what I observed of Pete. And it is a little bit different than some of the things I've said in photo reading classes. And one of them was I was correct. Pete is very strong visual text. So he does very well with written text when he is learning something. And then he responds very well to oral stimuli. So by having somebody ask him the questions, it helps prompt the answers. And then this is the part I didn't know about you, Pete, is that his reflective process is he pauses, and you notice that he was willing to stay in silence long enough for his pictures to show up. So it's the visual picture part that I had not recognized in Pete's abilities. And then when he'd get a picture, he was willing to play them repetitively. And also he asked himself a question, or you implied you asked this question, what does this picture mean? What does this picture mean? And he was willing to wait for the answer to show up. Again, reflective process. And one of the key things I wrote down here about this is that the images show up like the story of Abe Lincoln. It appeared it was Abe Lincoln standing on that soapbox. He didn't go into Abe Lincoln, but he knew that that image of Abe Lincoln stood for something. And that's what he went for, because he understood that his goal was to get the information out of it. Now, I wanted to share another part that was very important that all of us want you to have as photo readers, and that is some of the material that is around on the peripherals on the walls, is about the behaviors you want to have. And it's obvious that Pete has a very courageous attitude or behavior. He's willing to go on screen without, or on TV or on an interview without even knowing what he wants to do, or what's going to happen. So his courage is really, powerful.
And it's not even so much courage. It's just a matter of doing it. And so what?
Yeah.
So what?
Mm-hmm. And then the ones that I want to point out is the generative behaviors that he was using. He is elaborating based on the questions he gets. As an instructor, we know that questions oftentimes kind of direct the correct answer if you know how to read the question. So he was able to take and hear the question and understand that he could elaborate on the words that were in the question. And then also seek for greater complexity and be willing to be a fluent thinker. So I just thought that was really a wonderful demonstration of those abilities.
And what you're saying there as far as when, like on the radio, it was very clear on the radio when they would ask the question, you could tell that I was just kind of paddling at first in some of the questions, but that paddling got the stuff going. And if you have to paddle to get the stuff going, you paddle to get the stuff going.